In 1914, the world just broke. That whole century of relative peace Europe had, gone. Torn apart by a conflict so huge, so brutal, they would eventually just call it the Great War. And believe it or not, it all started with a single bullet.
And that's really the question, isn't it? How does one assassination in a city most people hadn't even heard of ignite a global firestorm in just a few weeks? I mean, it sounds almost crazy, right? But it happened. So let's walk through it.
I mean, just look at this. You've got one murder on June 28th, and by August 4th, the whole continent of Europe is at war. That's what, a little over a month? That speed, that's what's so shocking. It was like a runaway train, and nobody could find the brakes. But this explosion didn't just come out of nowhere. The whole chessboard was already set up. Europe was basically a powder keg, split into these two massive, armed camps, just staring each other down. On one side, you had the Triple Entente. That's France, Britain, and Russia, all kind of united by a fear of Germany's growing power. And on the other side, you had the Triple Alliance. Germany, the massive but shaky Austro-Hungarian Empire, and Italy. All it needed was a spark. And here it is, the spark. In Sarajevo, the heir to the entire Austro-Hungarian Empire, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, is shot dead. And the guy who pulled the trigger? A 19-year-old Slav nationalist named Gavrilo Princip. This one act of violence became the excuse for everything that came next. So the first domino falls right away. Austria-Hungary points the finger at its rival, Serbia, and hands them this ultimatum with a list of demands so humiliating they knew Serbia would have to say no. And sure enough, Serbia rejects it. And bam, Austria-Hungary declares war. Hours later, shells are already falling on Belgrade. And that's what brings in the first of the big players. You see, Russia's Tsar, Nicholas II, he saw himself as the big protector of all the Slavic peoples, and that included the Serbs. He feels like he has to do something, right? So he orders the gigantic Russian army to mobilize. And just like that, this little regional fight is about to go big league. Now, Germany's Kaiser Wilhelm had given Austria-Hungary what was basically a blank check, a promise that we've got your back. So when he sees Russia mobilizing its troops, he takes it as a direct threat. Germany declares war on Russia, and now the dominoes are falling, fast. Okay, and this is key. Germany wasn't making this up as they went along. They had a playbook for this exact situation. It was called the Schlieffen Plan. The idea was brutally simple. They knew a war with Russia meant they'd also have to fight Russia's ally, France. So the plan was to hit France first, and hit them hard. A lightning-fast invasion through neutral Belgium to knock them out of the war. And then they could turn all their firepower to deal with the huge but much slower Russian army in the east. And that's exactly what they do. They put the plan into motion. Germany declares war on France and sends its armies pouring right into neutral Belgium. This one move, it was a huge gamble with massive consequences. Because, you see, there was a big problem with that plan. For decades, Britain had promised to protect Belgium's neutrality. The German invasion crossed a line they just couldn't ignore. London gives Berlin an ultimatum. Get out of Belgium. Berlin ignores it. And that's it. Britain is in. All the great powers of Europe are now officially at war.
And the result of all this? 6 million. By the first week of August, 6 million men were on the march. An entire generation called up for a war that most of them thought would be a grand adventure. They thought they'd be home by Christmas. They had no idea.
And you gotta remember, this wasn't just some local fight in Europe. These were massive global empires. So when the home countries went to war, the conflict instantly went global. It exploded everywhere, from the fields of France to the plains of Africa. Right away, you see two totally different wars taking shape. Out west, the German plan almost works. They get to within 40 miles of Paris before the Allies dig in and make this desperate stand at the River Marne, halting the advance. But in the east, whoa, totally different story. At the Battle of Tannenberg, the Germans scored this absolutely crushing victory against the Russians. So, you're probably wondering, how? How did Germany win so decisively at Tannenberg? Well, it's almost unbelievable. This quote here says it all. The Russians were basically broadcasting their battle plans in the clear, uncoded radio messages. The Germans were just listening in, and they knew every move the Russians were going to make. What a catastrophic mistake. And I mean it, this was truly a world war. Check this out. Japan jumps in and grabs a German naval base in China. Australian and New Zealand troops capture German colonies in the Pacific. The Ottoman Empire sides with Germany and attacks Russia. And over in the Middle East, Britain moves to secure the oil fields in Persia that its navy runs on. The entire planet was being dragged into this. And then there was the war at sea. Britain's Royal Navy, the most powerful in the world, threw up a blockade around Germany, trying to basically starve their economy into submission. But Germany had a terrifying new weapon: the U-boat, the submarine. These things could attack without warning from beneath the waves, and they were a lethal new threat to Britain's control of the sea. So by the time 1914 was drawing to a close, any of that early hope for a quick victory, it was gone, dead. That dream of a glorious short war was over, and a very grim new reality was setting in. 250,000. Think about that number. That was the number of casualties each side suffered in just one battle, the Battle of the Marne. The world had just never seen killing on this kind of industrial scale before. It was completely new and completely horrifying. And all that firepower, the machine guns, the artillery, it led directly to this: trench warfare. The only way to survive the constant hail of steel was to dig. And soon you had this insane 350-mile-long scar of muddy, fortified ditches stretching all the way from the Swiss border to the sea. And that was the big, sinking realization that set in as the year ended. All that talk about being home by Christmas, it was a fantasy. The soldiers were stuck in a bloody, muddy stalemate, and they weren't going anywhere. But you know, even in all that horror, something incredible happened. On that first Christmas, in some parts of the line, the soldiers just stopped fighting. British and German troops climbed out of their trenches, met in the middle of no man's land, traded gifts, and even played a game of football. Just a brief, fleeting moment of humanity in a world that had gone completely mad. But it was just a moment. As 1914 ended, the reality was grim. All the plans for a quick war had failed. The armies were deadlocked. Millions were already casualties. And the question on everyone's mind was a terrifying one. What comes next? What kind of monster had the world just created?